As the race towards the ANC's elective conference in December heats up, the City Press suggests Jeff Radebe has been backed by some to put his hat in the ring for the party's Deputy Presidency. According to the newspaper, calls are mounting for Radebe to stand for the position. It's believed he's being backed by the party supporters from the Free State. Quite a number of names have been circulating publicly for various positions within the top six for some time now. But let's look at this closely with political and Sanusha Naidu. Sanusha, thank you so much for your time. I mean, those who support Jeff Radebe, if that article is anything to go by, are quoted as saying that his experience in both the ANC as one of the longest serving National Executive Committee members and the head of policy. They also talk about his era in government since, of course, the presidency of late former President Nelson Mandela. They say that he's, a capable man who can stand for this particular position. Your thoughts?
Good afternoon, Bongiwe, and good afternoon to the viewers. I mean, I think it's quite an interesting set of events that have started off in the course of 2022 around the elective conference, and we're only in March, and we all feel as if this is now taking on a life of its own. I think it's a bit more premature to call it right now, particularly because I think the party is going through its own sense of existential renewal. And so putting names out there right now also raises questions around, where these names are coming from. You mentioned factions and different provinces and different groupings within the party that may be supporting particular individuals. Yes, Mr. Radebe has a long history in politics in South Africa, both in terms of his anti-apartheid struggle, but also in the context of serving in government, as you rightly pointed out. But right now, I think there's a bigger question here for the party. It has to deal with not just who is going to be in that top six. It has to deal with the fact that there are other avenues that need to be addressed. The whole modernization of the party, the renewal doesn't just involve people whose names come in perhaps because there are different factions that want them there. It's a question of the youth factor. It's about questions of gender parity. It's questions around how does this renewal take place beyond just names that have come from yesteryear into the space. So I think there's a lot that's riding on the question of renewal, and we have seen the different names that have come up, but some of them may be individuals that still don't represent a kind of youth dividend or a renewal based on new kind of leadership that's going to come in for the future of the party.
And one of the tests at the back of what you talk about, which you say that is a lot that the party still needs to do, in the lead up to December, is also what we saw the president, especially after being elected in 2017, saying that we've now seen the end of slate politics. But when you see such names and, being bandied about, it suggests that we're still in for slate politics, does it not?
It does actually suggest that these kinds of factions and slates do exist. I mean, in the context of a political party, I think it's par for the course. It just becomes much more embedded right now. I think the other point, Bongiwe, to make right now on this whole question of why we're seeing certain names kind of reappear from the question of, on the basis of capability and the basis of capacity, etc., is that the party is really starved of that kind of center. It's starved of that intellectual capacity. It's starved of that kind of, sense of identitional power that exists within the need for renewal. So you're kind of getting the different names coming up, some of them with the experience, some of them also linking back to the Deputy Presidency as well. So I think to a large extent, that's part of the challenge in how this renewal project goes forward, and perhaps even the challenge around even the slates, the factions finding its articulation of the space that it needs to engage in, but it's really lacking that capacity, and therefore you're seeing these kind of names that are coming back into the fold that were from previous NECs and from previous presidency, but they haven't really left the party, but they're just kind of rediscovering or redefining themselves within the party.
And Sanusha, all of this is also happening against some reports that are suggesting that, months ahead of the party's elective conference, some of the allies of the president are about to seize control, as some of these reports put it, of some of the party's most strategic committees. Now, Sanusha, this comes, of course, at the back of that article that we also saw in the Sunday Times last week that was talking about the centralization of power, when the president placed certain ministries that are key in the presidency. Could there be some truth to these centralization thoughts that are we're seeing in the public domain?
I think part of this challenge for Bongiwe is the fact of this is that there's so much of uncertainty around what is the plan, what is the process going forward, what is the actual architecture in terms of the stabilization of the party, but also the kind of renewal. So I think that's where we're finding ourselves in this kind of space of uncertainty when it comes to the issues that you've raised around, where's the centralization of power happening? Is there also a sense that we're going to go back to this idea that perhaps the president, if he does get re-elected in the elective conference in December later this year, then does he need to have a group of people within the NEC, within the executive of the party, within the broader structure of the party that he can rely on, that gives him a little bit more free time to govern in terms of governing of the state. So these are all of these different permutations and calculus that are being made in terms of where we are going. And I think, again, we come back to the question of, the uncertainty around these issues, but also going forward is how are they going to play out? And I think that's where we are. And I think it's a bit too premature right now to call it for 2022 December elective conference.
Could it be also premature to look at this week, Sanusha? I mean, there's a motion of no confidence against the president that has been tabled by ATM. And of course, they've been dealt a blow because they cannot have the secret ballot. The speaker said no. At the same time, the DA is saying that, it's tabled its own motion of no confidence against cabinet and not necessarily the president. Some are looking to this process to try and get some kind of certainty. But given what we've seen in Parliament before, I don't think these can go anywhere, can they?
No, I think that what you're going to see is that it's going to happen in terms of the process of Parliament, the fact that you've had the Speaker allowing for this motion of no confidence to go forward, but of course it cannot be a secret ballot. And so I think what you're going to see in this whole context of both the DA and the ATM motions, but more importantly in the ATM motion, is that you're going to see the caucus of the ANC in Parliament and the ANC members in Parliament, probably the majority of them come together and close off. Because it's a secret ballot as well, we won't know how particular individuals will vote, but definitely there'll be a lot of work going on in the caucus of the ANC in order. I don't think they can afford to have a major deviation from where they see themselves in protecting the president as well. So I think this is going to be an interesting test, but I don't think it's going to end up, and I could be, eating my words if it shows that there are more ANC MPs that in the final tally of who was there, who voted, and how you do the calculations and the breakdown of the calculations, if it does show that they came within a whisper of a simple majority in terms of the ATM motion of no confidence in the president and the vote. But I do think that it's not going to, they have to show some level of stability as well, some level of, unity and some level of coming together. And I think that's what's going to happen in this week.
Especially, Sanusha, as you talk about a test, I can't help but think of another test that the party is also being subjected to in the public domain, which might also be at play when it comes to what's happening in Parliament later on this week. And that is the State Capture Commission's report with all the allegations that are contained against various members as well.
Well, that's one of the issues that I think has to also be ventilated, not only in the context of where we are in this week and where we are going forward in terms of our political body, but also in the context of the later in the month, the NEC meeting, in terms of what do they do with those individuals that have been, according to the recommendations of the State Capture Commission's part 3, what do you do with those individuals that have been referred for further investigation and corruption charges to be pursued? I mean, you've got now you've got the Minister of Resources, Energy and Resources. Again, he's come out and he's made a statement in terms of taking this under judicial review. We haven't come to the point where the 3 parts of the Zondo Commission report on the state capture has been tabled for discussion, has been taken to Parliament, presented, etc. But we can see how all of this is playing out in the context of how different individuals are responding to it who have been named or implicated in the 3 parts of the report. And I think that's going to be key as well in the context of whether or not the MPA does move forward, and does it have enough of evidence, or does it have to still do the evidence, and the burden of proof again is on the state to basically find the evidence, put it together, and go forward with what the recommendations are, with for example on the former president as well. So it's quite some really big issues coming out from the Commission of Inquiry report into state capture, but also I think it's going to test the party, as you rightly point out, in its own internal dynamics and mechanisms, particularly, I think, in terms of whether or not certain people are asked to step aside, even in the context of being ministers.
Sanusha, from what we talk about, it looks like it's going to be yet another busy year as we really look at these big stories in the public domain. But let's leave it there for now. Thank you so much for your analysis. That was political analyst Sanusha Naidu.